We had it was a big fight, you know. It was terrible. All I could see, my girlfriend Trotty, she ran into the studio. She said, Chaka, come here quick. I went in the bathroom. I saw it was Andre's wide back, going at him. You know, I thought it was going to kill him. Yeah, so there was some volatile stuff going on. We were young adults trying to find our way in a very fast-paced, demanding business, you know.
This incident, it just makes me think back a little bit. I mean, Chaka was right. She said, hey, you know, I gave him an ultimatum. I refused to work with him anymore after he beat up my husband. But I'd like to say that a year later they were divorced. And also they were all high and drunk as a skunk when they came into the studio that night. I didn't even know why they were there. We were mixing. And there was a gang of them, 4 or 5 people, you know, Chaka and her entourage. They came in, I guess, to listen to the music, you know, listen to some of the songs, because we were mixing. They wanted to hear some of the tracks. She wanted to hear some of the finished tracks. So while we were mixing, Richard Holland constantly screaming out, I don't like the vocals on that. That should be louder. And who did this? And blah, blah, blah. And, you know, just his own personal comments. And I got to tell you, I mean, that was wrong timing for him to be saying anything at all, because Andre had been in the studio 3 or 4 days, like 3 or 4 in the morning. We'd start at 6 in the evening and we'd mix until late at night, and we were so focused onto, because it was just beautiful music. The strings and Tony's guitars, and Hawk was playing in the band then. Those art things he was doing, and the drums and bass, it was just, we were in heaven mixing all that beautiful music. Chaka's vocals, her backgrounds. You gotta remember, this was days before digital, and everything was analog, and everything was right there in your face. And it's a lot of work to mix, because you gotta move faders, and you gotta, you know, set up your thing, all your moves. Okay, I'm gonna move here. This has gotta come down a little bit right at this bridge, and over here we move this up. You know, it's a job. And the 3 of us had been mixing, the recording engineer and Andre and myself. I really love that stuff. To me, that's one of the best parts of recording albums, is mixing. The final product for people to, you know, see and hear before it's released. And Chaka and her entourage are in there drunk, high as a kite, making noise. Richard Holland screaming his comments, take this out, I don't like that, put the other guitar in. And Andre just lost it. I didn't lose it, Andre lost it. And all I remember is Andre disappeared from his seat, and the music stopped, and the next thing I know is I'm hearing noise down the hallway. And I run out and I see Chaka with a bottle in her hand. Courvoisier bottle. And she's crying and she's freaked out. I'm like, what happened? What happened? Andre beat up my husband. And Andre had taken Richard in the bathroom at Kendon Recorders. And he beat the guy up pretty bad. He had bumps all over his face, but he wasn't dead. And he didn't have any trauma. He just got a good ass whipping. And, you know, that incident, it was terrible and it was bad, but I also remember hearing the stories about Chaka when she got in Rufus. Nobody liked her all the while. Rufus was a 90% white band, except for Chaka, who's black, and Andre, who's half and half. And Andre really loved her voice, And he kept saying to himself, he kept saying, hey, this is what we need if we're gonna make some kind of statement in the music business. The music we're doing is great, but we need this kind of singing. This girl's got talent. We need her singing in this band. And he realized it. And so he'd buy her clothes and, clean her up and, whatever he needed to do to keep her in there. Even, standing up for her family. There was an incident where early Rufus days, they were playing at the Stone Toad over in Milwaukee, and Andre brought Chaka home with him in the band truck. They had a van which put all the equipment in the back, and it was icy and snowy, and they went over in the ditch and they spent the whole night in the ditch. Finally, a tow truck towed them out, and when he took Chaka home, she ran up to the front door, knocked on the door, and Chaka's mom came out and said, "Where have you been all night?" And she said, "Oh, Mom, the truck broke down, blah, blah, blah. We were in the snow. We couldn't get any help." There were no cell phones back in those days. And she said, "Well, where's the money from the gig?" And Chaka says, "I don't have money. We don't get paid until tomorrow." So she would not let Chaka in the house. Chaka's mom would not let her in. And Andre, she went back to the truck, and Andre took her home with him and kept her overnight and until everything smoothed out. So he really was a big Chaka fan, and he really loved the idea of her singing in Rufus, and he did everything he could to keep her there. Whatever bad things happened, he always cleaned it up for her, and just so she could sing in front of this band, because he could hear something in her voice and he knew she was special. The other guys didn't care. They were like, just another chick from the hood or whatever, I don't know if they really thought that way, but that's what I'm getting from this. So she stayed in Rufus because of Andre, because of his vision and him wanting her to be there. So now fast forward to this fourth album we're doing, Ask Rufus, and Chaka's now got some fame. She's being separated. Instead of Rufus the band, it's Rufus featuring Chaka Khan, and so she's got her own little thing now, and she's feeling huffy. And when Andre beat up her husband, she's like, "No, that's it. No more Andre, either me or him."
And that was the last album he worked on, Ask Rufus, which was his biggest selling record.
That was the last one he worked on.
That's the last one he worked on.
Well, I said, I gave him an ultimatum, I said, it's me or him. Because that kind of, those outbursts, that was the first one. He had some, I think he had some issues with anger.
That doesn't sit good with me. I mean, she could have waited a couple of weeks and let things die down. And then, because Andre was vital, once he left, and he did leave, he volunteered to leave. He didn't let it get to the ultimatum point. Once he left, things got really rough with Rufus. I mean, we were all fighting. Me, Tony, and Hawk were the main top three guys fighting over songs and, this and that, where to record. We had money, we had budget. Tony's the most stubborn person I've ever met in my whole life. Very, very, very stubborn. And, it'd be okay if he were able to produce results with that stubbornness. And so nothing ever happened. And Hawk was a good writer, but he didn't have any experience producing anybody. I didn't either at that point. I did later. But at that point, I had no experience. But the three of us just fought like crazy. And somehow we kept going and pulled through. I got Moon Calhoun, the Gap Band drummer, to replace Andre. And we moved on from there. We moved into a new era. And kept selling records, kept doing tours. Moon didn't last long, but we got John Robinson after that. Then we moved into another phase, and then we started selling albums. We got Quincy Jones to produce us, and that was a good project. We had more gigs, more touring, another gold album. So things actually did keep going once Andre was gone. It didn't completely stop, but everything just died and ended after the live Rufus album. Everything died. And Andre even tried to jump back in there when he was at MCA and do a reunion with the idea of doing a new recording and some touring or whatever. And he was an executive at MCA, pulling down big money. He didn't need to do it, but just his love for Rufus and thinking back, oh, this is something that would be fun to do and bring people in and get Tony, Bobby, Chaka, Kevin, Hawk, get us all back in there, for the fans. And that never worked out, but, just amazing. It just makes me think, the whole idea of this interview and this conversation here is, I wonder if Chaka would have waited 2 weeks and cooled out and thought, you know what, we were all drunk, we were all high, and Richard was screaming. So whatever, the bumps have gone down. He don't look so bad now. All right, what's the next gig? Oh, the album is selling? Oh, great. Ask Rufus was one of our best albums, one of our best selling albums. And I could see why now. I listen to it every time I listen to it now, it's like, yeah, we did that. Those are songs we wrote and played. Wow. But it didn't happen like that. The universe dealt us these set of cards.